Imagine three engineers, each building a vector search feature. One setup costs the most to run, one runs incredibly fast but misses hits sometimes, and the third runs on very low budget but hits the disk constantly. So who's done the best job, and did the other two screw up? Hold that thought and let's take a look at the actual architecture. Cora's built the expensive one. She's using a high-dimensional embedding model, full precision vectors, deep re-ranking on every query. She checks the search quality through recall and goes home happy. Samantha's done too. She picks the same embedding model family as Cora, but she's using a slightly smaller model, truncated the vector to a third with Matryoshka, configured her index with BBQ quantization, and skipped re-ranking entirely. Her results come back lightning fast. And Ben's pushed to production. He's using a self-hosted open source model with vectors living almost entirely on disk, aggressive quantization everywhere, and then a tiny reranker at the end to clean things up. His cloud dashboard shows a tiny bill, which makes him very happy. Should they all be happy with these vastly different outcomes? What do you think? Let's learn more about these decisions. To configure vector search, you're really setting up three big subsystems, each playing a big part. The first decision relates to the embedding model. That's decisions like which model generates your vectors, how many dimensions, and where it's hosted. The second is the vector indexing and storage. That defines how these vectors are stored, compressed, and searched. You need to decide on the index type, the quantization, and the recovery mechanism. The third is re-ranking. Here, you're deciding whether to run a second model to rescore the top results. And if so, which model, how many results do you feed it, and is it worth the latency? Each one of these subsystems, of course, has parameters that you can tune. So while the defaults are sensible, you can tune these parameters to get your system better optimized for accuracy, speed, or cost. The hard part is knowing where to set each one for your situation. Here's what our engineers are working on. Cora is building a legal and medical research tool. She's working with about 1 million documents, each containing long, dense filings and studies. So after chunking, that becomes tens of millions of vectors. What matters the most to Cora is search quality. If her tool returns the wrong case or study, someone makes a bad decision. Maybe that leads to a lawsuit or a medical research goes down the wrong path. Quality above everything. Samantha runs product search for an e-commerce platform with millions of SKUs and one day potentially billions. Her customers are impatient shoppers, meaning every millisecond of latency risks a lost conversion. For Samantha, search results need to be good, but speed matters more than perfection. Ben is building a document archive. Tens of millions of documents now, hundreds of millions eventually. Potentially, Ben's looking at billions of vectors after chunking. But this is a dusty archive. Most documents are rarely accessed, and his users demand competitive pricing above all else. Ben's job is to keep cost as low as possible. You can see that these are all very different tasks. Sure, they all need vector search, but that doesn't mean the same system can serve their needs any more than the same computer chip can be used for an iPhone or supercomputer, and Tickle Me Elmo. Let's take a look at how the specific decisions change as a result, starting with the embedding model. The embedding model has the biggest impact on your search quality, and a big chunk of your costs. But choosing a model is a bit more nuanced than picking a name from a list. We can talk in detail about model choice in another video, but let's keep it short here. When choosing a model, make sure it supports the form of your input-like modalities. So, do you need to embed images, audio or video, for example, as well as text? And then whether it supports the languages that you need. Once you know that, the MTab is a great starting point for choosing a model. You get a great deal of information about the model and benchmarks on standard tasks. Just keep in mind that scores are self-reported across generic benchmarks. And since your actual task is unlikely to involve the benchmark dataset, it's a good idea to test on your actual data. Beyond the model itself, there's a powerful trick called Matryoshka representation learning. It trains the model so that the first n dimensions carry the most important information, so you can just chop off the rest at the end. Starting from a 1024 dimensional vector like that from the Gina v5 text model, you can only retain the first 512 with minimal quality loss while halving your storage needs. Choosing a Matryoshka trained model means dimensional choice is a separate decision from model choice. Pick the best model you can afford and then truncate the smallest dimension your recall tolerates. And then there's hosting. Managed inference through, say, Elastic or another API like Gina versus self-hosting open-weight models on your own GPUs. Self-hosting eliminates per token cost, which starts mattering a lot above 100 million tokens a month. But you have to manage a lot of infrastructure, which we all know isn't easy or cheap, especially when you factor in the potential downtime or the resources required. Given all that, let's talk about what choices make sense for our friends. Remember that Cora prioritizes search quality. She wants to use a high-performance model with full length and full precision vectors to help her get maximum recall. So she uses a Gina v5 text small through Elastic Inference Service at full 1024 dimensions. Samantha is after speed. She uses the even smaller versions of the Gina model, the v5 text nano through Elastic Inference Service. It's not as performant as the v5 text small, but it's faster, and she speeds up her system further by truncating the resulting vectors with Matryoshka embeddings. Ben does his research and finds that self-hosting is the way to go, with the lowest long-term costs. He evaluates the Gina v5 small model through the Gina API and then decides between an on-prem deployment with a license from Elastic or chooses an open-weight model like a Qwen model, which might not perform as well, but it would lead to lower costs. They've now got some sort of an embedding model outputting vectors. What they need is a vector index and storage configuration, which will determine how they're stored, compressed, and searched. The key configuration targets here are the vector index type, parameters within that vector index type, and quantization. Broadly, there are two families of common vector index types these days. One is HNSW, which is memory-based, and the other is a disk-based index. The HNSW family builds a multi-layer graph where each vector is connected to its nearest neighbors. This is the fast, high recall type of vector index with the requirement that the graph and the vectors need to fit in memory. Then there are disk-based indexes like DiskBBQ. They take a fundamentally different approach to avoid this memory limitation of HNSW. DiskBBQ, for example, partitions vectors into clusters and only puts the centroids into memory, leaving the actual vectors on disk. This hugely reduces the required memory, and while the search latency isn't as good with DiskBBQ with HNSW in general, the difference isn't that big, and other operations like indexing or ingestion is actually faster with DiskBBQ than with HNSW. Both HNSW and DiskBBQ also have further detailed parameters for tuning the indexes. When it comes to HNSW, the key parameters are M, which defines how many connections each node can have in the graph, and EF construction, which is the size of candidates to keep in memory while building the graph. Moving to DiskBBQ, the key parameter is default visit percentage, which sets the default fraction of vectors to be visited per shard during search. And let's talk a little bit more about quantization. By default, vectors might be made of 32 bits each, but it turns out that a lot of that information can be just thrown away with fairly limited accuracy penalty. So we can actually only use 8 or 4 bits, or even a single bit with BBQ or better binary quantization to represent each number. Quantization saves RAM and speeds up retrieval. Note that it doesn't necessarily save disk space, as Elasticsearch always keeps the raw vectors on disk for rescoring. Speaking of which, rescoring in combination with oversampling is what vector search engines use these days to recover most of the lost information. At query time, let's say you ask for the top 10 results. Then, what a system like Elasticsearch does is to apply oversampling, grabbing additional like 3 times the required number. So that would be the top 30 candidates using the quantized vectors. It then rescores all 30 against the original unquantized vectors on disk and returns the best 10. For most datasets, this recovers nearly all of the recall loss. Knowing all these, what do you think our engineers would choose? Because here's what I think. Cora picks HNSW unquantized with full precision, M of 32, and EF construction of 400 for a denser graph. Roughly, she might require 5 GB of RAM per million vectors, or 100 GB of RAM per 20 million vectors. You can see how this starts to get very expensive for Cora as the dataset grows in size, but she'll get the best search quality possible. Samantha picks BBQ HNSW. This is the same graph algorithm as Cora's, but with 32 times less memory for the vectors thanks to BBQ quantization, with default parameters and 3 times oversampling. As a result, Samantha would need less than a gigabyte of RAM per a million vectors. The oversampling fits inside her latency budget and recovers a big part of her recall loss. Now Ben picks BBQ disk. At his scale, HNSW would need hundreds of gigabytes of RAM, which he can't afford. And if the graph falls out of memory, latency spikes significantly. So instead, he uses DiskBBQ, which needs much less RAM to start with, and when it does run out, it degrades linearly and gracefully. He might only need 100 megabytes of RAM per million vectors and enjoys fast ingestion. He can even set on-disk rescore to true, so even the rescoring step happens on disk and doesn't blow his RAM budget. Now, all of them have chosen their models and configured the indices. They could stop here, but they would be missing out on a nice improvement from something called the reranker. Embedding models need to pre-process every document and turn them into embeddings before knowing what the query is. So the query and the document are processed separately, meaning that they never see each other. This is a shame because knowing the query, as you can imagine, would let a model make a more informed decision about what part of the document to pay attention to. But this just isn't possible with embedding models, which have to process millions of documents. It would simply take too long to do this once you have the query. This is where reranking models come in. These models read the query and the document together and produce a much more accurate relevance score with better context. These types of models are also called a cross-encoder model. So a really good way to use cross-encoder model is to use it on the set of results that you've retrieved with the embedding model. And then because of this, cross-encoder or other similar models used as a second stage of a pipeline are also called reranker models. Of course, this is another model to run, which means you have to make another set of decisions, like we did with the embedding models. So what model to use, how to run them, and so on. But they do provide yet another uplift in retrieval performance, so they are big parts of people's toolkits in retrieval. Having said all this, you might think that the choices for our heroes are obvious, but I'm not so sure about that. Cora uses deep reranking with the Gina reranker v2 model. She actually over-retrieves a larger result set than she needs with the initial embedding model, let's say 100 or even more, and then puts them into the reranker to get the best possible result. On the other hand, Samantha skips reranking entirely. Again, she prioritizes speed here and doesn't want to pay for the extra latency. The 3 times oversampling on BBQ HNSW is effectively her quality recovery, just using the original vectors rather than a separate model. Now, what about Ben? He actually incorporates reranking here with the Gina reranker v3 model. That might be surprising because it's another step that'll incur cost. But the v3 reranker is a listwise model, which can rerank up to 64 results in just one inference call. Whereas for a pointwise reranker like the v2 reranker that Cora used, 100 documents means 100 inferences. So for Ben, this is a really cheap way to recover a lot of accuracy that he's lost earlier. Let's recap. This is what our heroes have chosen. Ben stacked savings at every layer and then used a cheap reranker to recover quality at the end. He's not cheap at worst, he's running a cost-optimized pipeline with a quality recovery strategy built in. Cora and Samantha both picked HNSW but configured it for opposite ends. Same core algorithm, but each with some key trade-offs. And you'll see that these choices cascade through others. The RAM difference between these 5 gigabytes versus less than a gigabyte versus about 100 megabytes per million vectors come from the combination of dimension choice, quantization, and whether the graph lives in memory. All 3 are correct, but none of them would work well for the other 2. Additionally, there are a couple more things worth knowing. We focused on vector search here, but most production systems actually combine vector search with BM25 or keyword search into what's called hybrid search. The reason is that they're exceptionally good partners. BM25 catches the exact keyword matches that embeddings miss, and embeddings catch the semantic stuff that keywords miss. For our heroes, it's yet another configuration choice, but it's one that also acts as a safety net. It makes your whole system less sensitive to any single vector config decision. All these might seem like a lot of impactful decisions, but don't be scared. These choices don't lock you in forever. Elasticsearch, for example, lets you upgrade between HNSW types, say from unquantized to quantized HNSW, like int8 HNSW or BBQ HNSW without indexing. New data picks up the new settings, old data keeps the old ones until you merge it. In a pinch, you can of course reindex your data too, so you can start somewhere reasonable and just tune from there. The one thing that is expensive to change is your embedding model. Switching models means re-embedding your entire dataset and typically re-indexing everything downstream. At Ben's scale, that's potentially billions of vectors to recompute. So spend time getting your model choice right or close during prototyping, not after you've indexed everything. Another tip is that if all of this feels like a lot, you can just use semantic text with Elasticsearch. It picks a solid model, sets good defaults for the index, and handles inference. You can start there, figure out whether you're a Cora, a Samantha, or a Ben, and then come back and start tuning the knobs before going to production. Note that BBQ Disk requires an enterprise license of Elasticsearch. For other tiers, BBQ HNSW is the most aggressive quantization available. So here we are, with our 3 personas optimizing the 3 key aspects of vector search and getting different answers that are somehow still correct. The key takeaways to repeat are these. The embedding model is still the most important aspect. The index type drives your resource requirements, and reranking is the optional precision layer that can rescue and uplift quality. None of these setups would work well for the other 2. The right config depends on what you're optimizing for. If this was helpful, please hit like and subscribe. Docs for everything we talked about are in the description. And tell me in the comments, which persona are you closest to? Are you a Cora, a Samantha, or a Ben? And what other vector search areas you'd like me to cover next? I read every comment, so I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you next time.